locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
You're tuned in to Night Vision Radio, exposing the truth one secret at a time. Prepare yourself as we explore the shadow worlds of suppressed history, secret knowledge, forbidden religion, and shine a light on the conspiracies to keep it all from us. Welcome to Night Vision Radio. Good evening, everybody. Welcome indeed to Night Vision Radio. I'm your host, Renee Barnett. Ooh, we got a kind of a spooky show, I guess, planned for tonight. Maybe not, maybe a little bit. But I know my guest is very exciting. He's an expert in Southern witchcraft and Southern magic and root doctoring and all those wonderful things. He's a teacher. He's an author. His latest book is Flame in the Cauldron, and you can find him if you want to take a look at him while we're talking here online. His website address is orionfoxwood.com. orionfoxwood.com. So have a look while we're chatting, and I'd love for you to join us in the live chat room located right here at inceptionradionetwork.com. And if you have a question for me or for Orion, which I'm sure it's probably going to be more for Orion, or a comment, throw it to me in the chat room, and I'll be happy to try to work it into the show where it is appropriate. So thanks so much. And Orion, thank you for agreeing to come on tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
And we got to thank our friend Patricia Baker for making our connection for us. She's a great friend of Night Vision and great friend of mine, and a friend of yours as well. So we want to thank Patricia for making this connection for us so that we could have this show tonight. I've got people already talking about the show in the chat room. People getting excited, and apparently one person in particular was super excited, and she says, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm getting to hear him," and it's really wild. So I'm happy, and she may be much more an expert in this area than certainly I am, because I'm not at all. But you know, when we were talking earlier today, Orion, for just a bit, and we talked about things like, you know, where I grew up was in Native America in Oklahoma. So we had things like, I think I shared with you the story when I was very, very young and became really ill. And my young husband's grandmother was full-blood Choctaw, and she prepared some kind of a tea or a potion with deer antlers. And had me drink it. And, you know, I did recover. I don't know whether it was because of the potion, but it sure didn't hurt me. And I know I really thought, oh my gosh, this is weird, drinking deer antlers. But then again, after I moved to Los Angeles a number of years ago, my mother occasionally still sends me a little plastic bag, she'll FedEx it or whatever, of cedar branches, because we use those to smoke ourselves, as we called it. A lot of people call it smudging, and, you know, to purify. So I think maybe we all have a little bit of witchcraft in our background, whether we really know it or identified it as such. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Well, yeah, because witchcraft really heralds from a time when our relationship was much closer to the spirit world. What later was called witchcraft because it really is a derived from an old Saxon term, was really originally a name for people who held wisdom, the Wiche. But later, with religions changing and a bit of religious propaganda, as happens when different religions invade each other, that wise person of the old ways began to be seen as somehow evil because they weren't a part of the regular church, and although some of them later became. So in all of our bloodlines and all of our cultures, we have these people who were either trained and or gifted to relate to the spirit world, to be able to relate to the spirit world for the benefit of humanity and their relationship to life itself, knowing that all that is visible comes from the invisible. So if we dig in our families, we're always going to find a little bit of what we may think of as witchcraft or folk magic. It's always going to be there.
Yeah, and it's funny because you sort of grew up in the South, certainly identify as a Southerner, and which is largely Christian. And I know that, and I considered, we considered ourselves Southern in Oklahoma because we were south of the Mason-Dixon line. But certainly, in dealing with some of the Native Indian cultures, there are a lot of people who pursue the practices, with roots and plants and things like that. Other remedies and rituals and things, but it seems kind of all jumbled up also with Christianity because, they were, I guess, influenced by the Europeans into Christianity. And so they do keep some of their old ways, but it seems to be kind of integrated into that. Do you find that in the South, where you grew up, with the practices that you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. Well, you find that all over the world, wherever the governing or sort of general populist religious tradition is, and especially if it required adherence, that folks who practice an old faith, maybe from a native practice, an indigenous practice, to them, they were like, well, the Creator's the Creator. They don't really care what you call it. That's just a name we humans have for it. So they had often no qualms with, kind of getting on board with that new religion. Sometimes it was, by risk of death also that they had to. But they did not lose their old ways. There's a concept I think it's used mostly in folkloric anthropology called syncretism, and what they would do is continue to practice their relationship with the spirit world, plant, animal, human, other, for the benefit of humanity, the benefit of a good life, but under the structures of the religious doctrine of Christianity. We must never confuse religion, spirituality, and magic. They can all look very different. I tell people all the time, because I'm a bit of a pagan boy, right? But I tell people, but I'm culturally Christian. I'm culturally Christian because I was baptized, and I didn't unbaptize myself.
That's right. Now that brings me to my next question is let's back up a little bit, because you came by all this pretty naturally, didn't you? Because you were kind of born into the culture of this and mixed with the Christian culture.
Right. Well,
so,
my entry. I'm sorry.
No. That's what I was just going to ask you, is what was your entry or your entree into this world?
Well, my entry into the world of the spirits and of magic was in my culture, because I'm of Southern Appalachian culture. And I was born and raised in the Shenandoah Valley, in the foothills of the Blue Ridge. And there you had this syncretic practice, mostly out in the countryside, that was a synergy of Celtic and English folk practices that flowed down from the Appalachians into the valley, and then co-mixed with what was left of the old slave magic, because unfortunately, of course, Virginia was the center of the slave trade. So you start having traditional African practices merging with some of the old traditional folk magic practices of England and Europe. Because remember that when people migrated here, for many of them, it became easier to preserve their old ways, because this is a big continent. They could hide in the mountains. They could hide on islands in the middle of lakes that are as big as small seas. You know, there was lots of places for them to avoid inquisitions and oppression. So they continued to do what they did, and they just syncretized to fit into their communities. And then many of them, it wasn't just, well, I'm acting Christian so I won't get in trouble. They loved Christianity, and Christianity became a part of their actual faith. But I would say Christianity with a twist.
Was a what? A twist?
With a twist.
Oh, Christianity right. With a twist, right?
With
absolutely. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I mean, the people that that I've run into that have this sort of, conglomeration of beliefs, they're very serious about their Christian beliefs. And, they do take some flack about their old ways from some people who've sort of completely gone over to the, to the mainstream side. But it seems like, in every culture that we can think of, and you mentioned, the Celtic culture, and I was going to ask you, and you basically answered it already, people who came from those areas in Europe brought those ways and those beliefs with them. That's how it got here. And then it mixed in with, other practices that were brought here by people who came from Africa, and probably from Native Americans.
Mm-hmm. And America is a hotbed of folk magic. Hotbed. Whether it's Ozark witchcraft or Appalachian folk magic or Southern root doctoring or hoodoo in the black community, or, the list goes on. It is a hotbed because of the mixtures of different cultures that came here, the size of the country. The other thing with some of these practices, especially conjure, you have to look at it, and that's the southern root work, you have to look at it in terms of the colonial era, the Civil War era, the Emancipation era, and then the Reconstruction era, and its face changes, what it looks like as people were migrating further north looking for jobs. They would meet other folks who were in similar difficult financial straits, and they would share. They would share with, say, Jewish folk magic workers or Asian folk magic workers. And the next thing you know, it looks like something very eclectic has occurred, but it hasn't. Because what's occurred is cultures, they meet each other, and they share. Like if you saw me sometimes with some of these traditional workers, here's a great story for you, Renee. I was at an event, and this guy comes up, has a strong Welsh accent. And he said, "Aren't you Orion Foxwood?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You're a charmer." And I said, "Well, yeah." And see, charmer is a term that's used in many magical cultures, and definitely in Appalachian folk magic, for one who knows the recitation of these often rhymed charms, for doing things like blowing fire out the burner, staunching blood, or causing the weather to change, or any list of things. And I was identified by the elders very early as a charmer. And I know, hundreds of them. And so he goes, he says, "I'm a charmer in the Welsh tradition, and I need a charm for," I believe it was a headache, to make headache go away. And then me, Orion, needed a charm for staunching blood. Or wait a minute, no, I got that reverse. He needed staunching blood, and I needed one for making a headache go away because I didn't have that one. And that was it. We shared. Magic workers have done that for centuries, and magic workers across cultures, because we got to remember, folk magic is not about some fad. It's not about a belief system. It's a practice. Sometimes it's even a vocation. And it's centered on getting your needs met. And often, because it grew out of poverty, or in the South, it even grew out of slavery, it's a way of leveraging the forces of life to justice and equity.
Am I hearing you also say that it's really all the same thing?
You mean across traditions, or?
Yeah, I mean, you said, what was it, that it might seem like a joining together or of something, but it's
eclectic.
Really not. Yeah, an eclectic mix, but it's really not, because really at the heart of it, or at the root of it, not to make a pun, is it really all the same thing, but people are using a different doorway to get in, like maybe with a different sort of style of practice, but are people basically, people's cultures and these old ways and folk magic, is it really sort of part and parcel of the same thing?
Well, here's what I would say. The structures of it may not be the same. The religious implications sometimes may not be the same. The needs are the same. Like across cultures, we have a need for love, food, shelter, money to pay our bills, justice, protection, wellness. You know what I mean? There's certain roots to our life that never change. We can get all the technology we want, but those core things in life don't change. So then what happens is, to answer your question, are they the same at the core? They're the same in that they're about achieving, getting and growing those core things that we need in life to be happy and healthy, preventing those things that are harmful from harming us, and a relationship between the visible world and the invisible world, knowing that all that is visible comes from the invisible. Therefore, at the core of these practices, being in a relationship with the invisible forces that affect visible things. So at that core, they're still the same, but it'll be the structures that might look different.
Right. There does seem to be some sort of crossover, and I was thinking, I know a lot in American folk art, maybe in folk art, folk magic, and maybe from other places too. I know they talk about work or working. I've heard, like in the South, working roots. I'm going to work some roots on this question or on this matter, things like that. And then, of course, in, alchemy, that sort of, came out in Europe, they talk about the work or the great work and achieving the great work. I wonder if there's any relationship there. I mean, is folk magic sort of like the poor man's alchemy? I
don't think so, because alchemy, but I see where you're going, which was a very astute observation. Alchemy is more about refining the spirit and purifying oneself from the lead to the gold.
Yes.
And raising ourselves to the highest nature. Folk magic is not necessarily about raising ourselves to the highest nature. It can be if the practitioner is very spiritual. Like, for instance, in my book, Candle in the Crossroads, which is what I wrote the most about the Southern folk work that I grew up around and continue to learn, I talk a lot about spiritual cleansing, and also about what I call knowing, growing, and healing and revealing your soul. So for me, as a worker, I am invested in the same kind of work that the alchemist is, and that is about also not having the best in life, but also about having the most clean and clear spirit, inner spirit that I can have. But now in root work, when they're talking about work, they're not talking about the refining of the spirit, the elevation of the spirit. They're just talking about the working itself. Like, for instance, if someone is doing some work to get a job or some work to protect, they'll call that the work.
Right.
Yeah.
Do they say do they say I'm going to work it, or do they use it as a verb as well as a noun?
Yes, exactly. They use it very much like that. And in fact, you'll hear root workers, they don't call themselves witches, so you'll hear them call each of the workers.
Workers. And is there a difference between a root worker and a root doctor?
No.
So it's sort of the same thing. It sounds very shamanic.
Yeah. Well, there's this element in Southern root work we can never leave out. If you look closely at the cultures that it grew out of, it is African at its base because it grew up everywhere where the slave trade went and was. It has been European folk magic, and depending on the immigration there, was it Spanish, was it French, was it English, you know what I mean, etc. Then you add to that, then who were the local indigenous people who were often in oppressed situations just like freed slaves were, the Native American people, so you'll have those elements in there. So like, for instance, I did a workshop one time out in Southern California, and I was teaching them how to make a hand, which is like a mojo. And I was teaching them how to, as we say, wake the root, feed the root, dress the root, and work the root. And there was a wonderful Native woman in the workshop, and she came to me and she said, Ryan, the way, not all of it, but the way you were working that, there's lots of Native American sort of philosophy or approaches in it. And she was surprised. I said, well, of course. That was a part of the elements that contributed to what we now know as root work or conjure. I have to tell you that where I grew up, they didn't call it conjure. I only heard it a few times, and I used the word in that book so people would understand what I was talking about, because it's a relatively known word in the South. They called it spirit doctoring.
Oh,
Isn't that a great term? A spirit doctor. So
it
you go to a
is.
spirit doctor to doctor your spirit or to doctor the spirits.
Wow, that's really interesting. Now, not to completely jump to something else, but I heard, and I hope this is true, but I heard that you worked with the great Marie Laveau. Is that possibly true?
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. My Shiro.
Oh, yeah.
She is...
What a personality and a character.
Oh, my goodness. You have to look closely at this woman. She, think of this, a woman, free woman of color, in the middle of Civil War occupation of New Orleans, unbelievable plagues, tens of thousands of people dying. She herself had lost children, yet she captured the attention of the most powerful city in the South, and nearly 200 years later captures the world's attention as a powerful spirit of voodoo. That's a testimony to the force of this woman, her legacy, and her enduring spirit. Oh,
yeah, absolutely. Now, what was it? How did you happen to connect with her, and what kind of work were you doing with her? Was she teaching you, or were you just sharing ideas?
A great question. Now, years ago, and then after I answer this one, I might like to mention a festival that I'm a part of doing in New Orleans. And we're going to
coming up
in November.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you're done answering what I asked, and please do share that information with us, and I'll also share it on our Facebook pages here.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
So many years ago, for the first time I'd ever gone, someone took me to New Orleans. I'd been really drawn, and I'd heard of Marie Laveau, but really didn't know that much about her, and what I did know was very sensationalistic.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I got there, met a wonderful woman, often knows Bloody Mary. She has Bloody Mary's tours there. She's quite a historian, as well as, you know, a paranormal researcher and a tour guide. And she took me on a tour, and we did a ceremony at her tomb in St. Louis, number 1. I think it's St. Louis number 1 cemetery. And a brief ceremony to connect with her spirit. When I connected with her spirit, her essence, her power, I was overcome with holiness and overcome with the immensity of her power. Well, needless to say, that sealed my fate for quite some time. I knew I'd be coming back to New Orleans to touch her spirit, to go to her tomb, to learn more about the ceremonies and ways, the offerings, the things to connect with her spirit, and have had a altar going for, I don't know, it's got to be 25 years now, to Marie. And I go to her for help. She likes to help with love and justice. That's her 2 favorite jobs. Well, she tends to, but she was definitely an all-around girl, you know.
And you said the
her
feeling...
power has grown stronger, and so she is the spirit of New Orleans voodoo.
Wow. And you said that you got the feeling of, overpowering feeling of holiness?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you know, of course, a lot of people, you know, especially people in the mainstream, would say, well, that's weird. You know, she was a voodoo priestess and this, that, and the other. But I think that, you know, we kind of have gotten the wrong end of the stick when it comes to holiness because of just, you know, particular programming that we each had depending on where we grew up and what kind of circumstances we grew up in. But can you describe that feeling from her that you were talking about?
First, I just felt power. And then I felt her receptivity, her desire to assist and uphold. And see, in her physical life, she helped many a dying person, as well as nursed many a person back to health from the many deadly infections that were ravaging New Orleans. So this woman quite literally was doing holy work, right? Now, I think we got to remember about when people hear voodoo and then they hear this voodoo queen, and they wouldn't put voodoo and voodoo queen and holy in the same sentence. A lot of that's, again, propaganda, right? Because voodoo itself stems from a traditional indigenous African practice, right? And racism can be written into things so cunning and devious. It's as simple as black magic, white magic. White magic is good. Black magic's bad. Well, the truth is magic is neutral, just like electricity is neutral. It can either cook your food, light your house, or it can electrocute someone. So, so how she used her power to help others and uphold others is what makes, and continues to do so hundreds of years now after her transition into the other world. She comes when called. And the truth is, you know, these spirits, they don't have to. They could leave all interest in us who are in the, you know, embodied realm when they pass to the other world. But many of them don't. They become exalted ancestors, and they want to be helpful to others who are trying to just have a good life. You know.
Wow. It's really interesting. I think we're going to have to take a quick break here, Orion. We're talking with Orion Foxwood. We're talking about conjuring and root doctoring and folk magic. So hang in there with us, and we'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. Lorian Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best. Do you have a smartphone? If so, Inception Radio Network is the best app for you. Available on iTunes, Android, Samsung, and most other app stores. Just search Inception Radio Network. With the app you can listen live, check out podcasts of recent and past shows, view our videos, see what shows are coming up, who the guests are, and, via the chat room, send live questions to those guests. You know it makes sense. Check your app store now. Inception Radio Network. I'll see you there.
Hey IRN listeners, make sure you tune in to Night Vision Radio with Renee Barnett. Renee will be exposing the truth one secret at a time. When? Thursdays. Every Thursday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Where? Right here on IRN.
Hello IRN listeners, this is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DreamNuage.com. Simple, raw, organic.
You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
Welcome back. You're listening to Night Vision Radio. If you're just joining us, I'm your host, Renee Barnett, and we're talking to author and conjurer Orion Foxwood. Now, Orion, we mentioned before the break that you're going to be making some personal appearances, and why don't we let our listeners know where those are going to be and what those dates are so that people in your area can take advantage of that?
Sure. One of the most exciting ones is coming up very, very quickly, May 8th through May 10th. And it's going to be at a beautiful place in Massachusetts called the Rose Center. I'm going to be doing a 2-day immersion experience into the fairy realms, into folkloric fairy tradition, which is the older practices, in a wooded area where we can touch those spirits so much closer. And if folks want to know about that, then go to the Rose, or go to Rose Center, ROWECenter.org. That'll be May 8th through 10th, and my workshop there is called Engaging the Realms of Enchantment. I'm also a part of a collective of conjure root workers called the Conjure Crossroads, And we're going to be doing a 2.5-day event in New Orleans, November 6th, 7th, and 8th. And if you just look up folkmagicfestival.com, we're also on Facebook. You can find more information there. That's going to be powerful.
Wow. Now, is that magic with a C or magic with a CK?
Well, I often use CK, but the truth is it's all magic.
But I mean for the website address.
Folkmagic.com. I think it's, now, you know what? I think it's with a C.
I'll look it up, and I'll let everybody know.
Okay.
Folk.
But this thing coming up at the Rose Center is going to be a rare experience for folks who want to get that kind of training. It's going to be intense.
Wow. That will be nice. I think it must be with a K because I didn't get it with the C. So, so that's Massachusetts and New Orleans. Where in Massachusetts is it?
It is at Row, Massachusetts. ROW.
Oh, that's the name of the town.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's in the mountains. I believe that is considered the Berkshires there. I think that's Western Mass, which of course is gorgeous.
Oh, absolutely. It's wonderful up there. And the weather should be getting nice.
Oh, yes.
So.
And the ability to connect with these potent ancient spirits will be real strong there.
Now, speaking of being in the out of doors and that sort of thing, I listened to one interview with you where you talked about the crossroads and the dark rider, going to the crossroads and connecting with the dark rider. First of all, who's the dark rider? And it seems to be through a lot of cultures.
Oh, yeah. Well, the first thing to understand about the crossroads, I think the best way to back into that answer, it might be a slightly long one.
Go right ahead.
Enjoy the info in it. Is many of the old crossroads have a history to them, right? They were built on Native American trading routes, right? And the Native American trading routes followed animal migratory patterns. Animal migratory patterns follow the ley lines and energetic grid of the earth. So what would happen is when you saw where paths cross, and then later that evolves into crossroads, these crossroads have power into the unseen and subtle spirit world of the earth itself. Now, that's one quality of the crossroads work. Another one is that historically, the crossroads, the center of the crossroads was owned by no one. Just like a graveyard, owned by no one. The graveyard being the place where those who live above the horizon and those who live below the horizon dwell. And so this concept of liminal places that are betwixt and between, claimed by none, are considered to be powerful. Also that they're meeting places where people coming and going places, come through, are considered to have power. What I was taught growing up that is at the crossroads, and I was taught the four-pointed crossroads, it has the power to affect the four roads of life, which are life, death, luck, and love. Mm-hmm. And that this crossroads, and in fact all thresholds, because remember the crossroads is a threshold between one state and another, has a spirit force that lives within it, an intelligence. The thing to remember, you mentioned shamanism earlier, is that to the old root workers and the old witches, the world was and is animated, alive, and filled with spirits and spirit energy, spirit life. So if one's sick, it's because of a spirit. Flu's not just a bug, it's a spirit. The threshold's not just a place, it's a spirit. So we go to the crossroads, we make offerings to encounter this spirit that governs transition and that governs the movement across boundaries, the movement to thresholds of change. And it's often called, there's so many names. And like you said, interestingly, this spirit shows up cross-culturally. It shows up everywhere. The concept of the spirit at the crossroads.
Well, you mentioned something that intrigued me just a second ago. You said, I personally work with the Four Crossroads, because in just when you said that, I was thinking about, I've done a lot of work in France, and there's some very energetic places there, and very powerful ley lines and telluric currents and that sort of thing. And I work, I don't know if you're familiar with the author Henry Lincoln. He's sort of the grand master of the entire Da Vinci Code. He was the guy, the sole living co-author of Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and he's lived in that area now for many years and done, tons of work and lots of other books on the subject. But in working with him and others in that area, we were looking for places where three roads met. Have you heard anything about that? And a lot of times when you would find those places, there would be some kind of an ancient stone marker or a calvaire or something like that that was put up long ago. Some of them very ancient. Some of them were Celtic. Do you know about the 3 points, and what does that mean?
I know about them. I don't know their lore. Like, for instance, in Greece, of course, you have Hecate of the three ways, the goddess Hecate of the three ways. So this seems to be, to also change from culture to culture, whether it's three-way or four-way, whether it's an X or a plus shape, whether it's a male spirit or a female spirit, right, that governs it. And I think that what seems, in my view, what seems to affect the cultural language around that is what grows out of the land itself. Because, see, we got to remember that the rituals and ceremonies and practices that these people did and do grew out of a relationship between the human and what I call the inscape, which is the interior landscape of the spirit world of place. Because you remember the oldest of magics was how to keep good weather, how to keep fertility flowing, how to prevent bad spirits from making us sick, how to keep the herds coming. So first and foremost, they want to be in a relationship then with nature, all of nature, to know what rituals, ceremonies, works need to be done to achieve those things, right? And then inclusive in that meant sort of listening to the interior land of the first ancestor, which is the earth itself, right? And so I think that language of 3 versus 4 may grow out of the spirit of place. Now, it just happens to be that what I grew up with was 4, and it was a male spirit. And in fact, what they called him where I grew up, it was my mama that told me about him when I was a kid. They called him the Dark Rider. And some of the lore with the Dark Rider is, and in fact, I can remember clear as a bell talking to my mom about the Dark Rider. And I was, you can imagine as a little kid, I was intrigued. And I said, well, Mama does, and he comes at 3 in the morning. I was taught that midnight was not the witching hour, 3 in the morning is.
That's what I hear, yep.
And so to go out to see him at 3 in the morning, so at a crossroads. And so I asked Mama, well, Mama, what happens? Is there a dark man on a dark horse? And she said, well, no, it's not quite like that. It's the 4 gates, the 4 roads open, and the spirits come riding up through those roads from an unseen place, and together they whirl into one being. Now, she told me not to do it, of course, because I was too young, and of course, what did I have to do? I had to go out and do it. So, well, that's what curious little young conjure boys do. So I went out and I did the work, and I learned very quickly why people interpreted him as a rider on a horse. I heard the sound of like horse, how they have a galloping sound.
Yeah.
But I heard it as if it was under the ground, and the hooves were beating up against the ground.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. And then this cold wind that comes up the Four Crossroads, the dogs throughout the neighborhood going crazy. And then you know the power is there and it's time to petition him.
Can you share, or would you share, sort of what you did to summons the Dark Rider?
Well, yeah, and also if folks want to really read about it in length, my book, The Candle and the Crossroads, published by Weiser, has that in it. But it was really simple, and, there's different traditions about how many nights you go and which night's the perfect night to start it. Should you go 7 nights, 9 nights, 5 nights? I went 7 different nights at 3 in the morning, and I started on a Wednesday night because Wednesday, as I was taught, is the day of the opener. And, of course, Wednesday is Mercury Day. And so I went at 3 in the morning. Now, 3 in the morning is, if you've ever got up and done prayer, or in fact, if the spirits want to reach you and they can't reach you at any other time, they will wake you up at 3 in the morning because the world spins. It in and of itself is a crossroads. It is a thinning time, a boundaryless threshold time. And so I went out, and how I was taught is you go to the crossroads, you take an offering. 3 mercury head pennies is what I grew up with. Or not pennies, I'm sorry, dimes. They're like antiques now. And, a shot of whiskey or a shot of rum. There we had whiskey. And yeah, the reason the spirits like to drink is it's fire. They draw the fire out of it. That's what they use. So I went out, knocked on the floor, between where the crossroads meet, and called to him, Dark Rider, opened the way and turned counterclockwise, spinning myself away from the realm of humanity into the realm of the spirits. Knocked again, Dark Rider opened the way, and then turned again, counterclockwise, and then did that same thing 3 times in total. So now I've spun myself into the realm of the spirits. Then I simply made my petition. I asked for help on whatever it was I needed to have help with, and I brought with me the mercury head dimes and the whiskey, and left those as offerings. Now, an interesting thing about the Dark Rider at the Crossroads, and this was, popularized, oh goodness, I just lost his name now, by the famous Delta blues singer, the whole meeting the devil at the Crossroads. People come to me all the time and go, Ron, I heard that you have to sell your soul to the devil at the Crossroads. And some of where that lore comes from is you have to understand that a lot of where that lore came through was Africa, and it merged with some of the European witchcraft practices that came over with the peasant people. And the only thing that a slave owned was their soul. They didn't own their flesh. They didn't own anything.
Wow, that's true.
So to give your soul was to give your heart to something. It wasn't to sell your soul like Faust or something like that. In fact, what I tell people, I say, you don't sell your soul, you bear your soul. Because he is also called, the spirit of the crossroads is also called the trick doctor. And he can see the tricks that you hide in your heart. So if you go to the crossroads meaning something bad for another, and it's unjust, he'll punish you, or he'll trick you.
So intention is very important.
Oh, yes. When you're working with powerful spirits, you can't, excuse my language, but you can't bullshit them. And cannot walk in there thinking you're just going to harm another. There's a saying in the witchcraft tradition I come out of, because I come out of, a few traditions I carry, and that the toucher is touched. Now, the conjure saying I grew up with is, what you conjure conjures you, which I really like as well. So we got to understand that if we make relationships that are toxic with the spirits, now that is the path that we have laid before us in relationship to them. And as the old saying goes, if you lay down with dogs, you'll get fleas. No disrespect to dogs, because I love dogs. The So I tell people, be mindful. You can get anything you want if you're willing to give everything you have up. Be mindful about why you go to such spirits as the Crossroads spirits, the Dark Rider. Be honest in your spirit, honest in your heart, because they know why you're there, even if you don't say it.
And is there an issue with ego? Is that something that you have to sort of take care not to get out of control?
Oh God, yes. Well, ego.
Because I mean, that's a big challenge, I think, for everybody. I mean, I know I've certainly, had my issues with that, and every time they pop up, I get slapped back down so quickly it's not even funny. And I find that a lot of times when people are getting into something, whether it's some kind of practice, if they become successful at it or, good at it or known for it, and it starts wearing on their ego and that starts taking over, then they kind of seem to lose their way in what they're doing. Is that a danger in this kind of work?
Well, it is. It is. We got to remember a couple things. The power, the magical power, does not come from us. It comes from the source, by whatever you call it. The second thing is the spirits will not be exploited. And so one has got to remember that with magic is high voltage work. I always tell folks that, there's 3 levels to the cultivation of the spirit. The easiest is actually spirituality, because spirituality is saying that, well, there's an essence of which all things is made, that lives through all things, and is in fact the creator of all things. What is its nature? What does it want? How do I be in right relationship with it, right? Mysticism goes further and says, well, if this source is in everything, then it's in me, and what is that part of the source that's in me what is that part want of this life, and how do I bring that out for me and live that life? Magic goes a step further. Magic is, I want to know what's in God's toolbox. I want to be a conscious creator. I don't want to just surrender to the will of fate. I'm going to exert a control over my fate, and I want to be in a conscious relationship with my life. And just because I'm a witch and a root worker doesn't mean I don't surrender to the will of the spirit. When I can tell that it's the will of the spirit right now that knows a greater picture. Sometimes I'm supposed to make a choice and affect that choice. Sometimes I'm supposed to have the inward serenity to know in my spirit that there's a greater hand guiding something that's happening in my life. Don't meddle with it. Ego is a whopper, and I've actually seen, and I hate to use a word so powerful, I've seen people who do magic work die from their own magic because of ego. Ego contaminates. It has to be honed.
Oh, my goodness. You're confirming a lot of stuff I was wondering about, because I've seen that happen to people. It's really, really wild. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to throw a couple of questions to you from the chat room before we go to the next break here. Durr says, Renee, does Orion think the Dark Rider may have a connection with the Civil War, perhaps Confederate cavalry or raiding rider?
Well, I think that's a good question, and I wish I could answer it. I don't know, but I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. I mean, that makes good sense, because I think the whole concept of the rider, the languaging itself tells us a couple things, that this being, that the spirit is mobile, it moves, it rides like the wind even. So they're telling us qualities of the spirit as discussed through a cultural language of the time that language came, which was likely colonial. So I think I think her question, maybe her insight may be as good as any as to why they might call it the Dark Rider.
Yeah. And you talked about the ritual that you did, long ago as a teenager to summon the Dark Rider. And I know you've done a million other rituals since then, but Lorraine would like to know if you have a favorite ritual for this particular time of year.
I have to think about that. Well, if I put it into just a magical working context, what I would say my favorite workings at this time of the year is spiritual cleansings, because just as I'm on the East Coast, right? So at this time of the year, we're in the spring, and the buds are still just opening. So that means life is bursting out with freshness everywhere. I want to have my magic on board with that, right? I want to sensitize and synchronize myself with that same force. So I like to work magic around cleansing and renewal, and also fanning the flame of my desires and vision for this year, for this time, for this cycle. I hope that kind of answers, because I could come up with a million different workings, but
right.
The area, yeah.
Is there maybe one, just pick one of those that you mentioned, and could you sort of share with us how you might go about performing that ritual? I know it's only like 3 minutes to break, but as
a quickie, let me mention then spiritual cleansing as a part of this. Spiritual cleansing should be the core of every magic worker's practice and every spiritual person's practice, because we get things on us. We step in things, people throw things at us, energetically. And we need to be conscious livers in our life. We don't want to be lived. We want to live life. So I'd recommend folks to take a bath that spans over 7 days, right? Get into the tub when the clock hand is going down, the minute hand. Fix yourself a container full of a mix of dark coffee, salt, like sea salt, a little bit of Florida water, and a little bit of lemon juice, and pour, make enough of that you could pour like a Dixie cup's worth of that into your water each of those 7 days, and get into the water each of those, and call to the spirits and the ancestors to help you clear from you the things that would restrain or girdle your soul and prevent you from achieving your joys and your well-being. And then take a little bit of that water every day and go out after you're done. Find a rotten stump or stump, where someone's chopped down a tree and it's still got that bottom part in the soil, and throw that cup of water at that. That's a cup of your bath water. That's called fixing. So you're fixing your work to a natural thing, something that's already occurring in nature, and then that has power, and that'll enhance.
But why a stump and not just a regular tree?
Well, that's not how I was taught. I was taught that what a worker does is it works with the power that's there. And so, for instance, a tree that's in the middle of rotting is taking apart something. So the spirit forces working through it are... Whereas a living tree is building. I might do something around renewal or something around wishes, fulfilling wishes with a living tree, but I wouldn't do that.
The cleansing. Huh. Wow, that's interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I hope I didn't force you into explaining something that you weren't going to explain.
Oh, no.
But it's very helpful to sort of get a mental picture.
My book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's time for another break. Boy, time is flying tonight. So if you will just hang in there with us, we'll be right back with Orion Foxwood. We'll be right back.
everyone. Lorian Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best. Do you have a smartphone? If so, Inception Radio Network is the best app for you. Available on iTunes, Android, Samsung, and most other app stores. Just search Inception Radio Network. With the app you can listen live, check out podcasts of recent and past shows, view our videos, see what shows are coming up, who the guests are, and, via the chat room, send live questions to those guests. You know it makes sense. Check your app store now. Inception Radio Network. I'll see you there.
Hey, IRN listeners, make sure you tune in to Night Vision Radio with René Barnett. Renee will be exposing the truth one secret at a time. When? Thursdays. Every Thursday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Where? Right here on IRN.
Hello, IRN listeners. This is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DreamNuage.com. Simple, raw, organic.
You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
Hey, we're back with Night Vision Radio. I'm your host, Renee Barnett. My guest tonight is Orion Foxwood. We're talking about conjuring and Southern American magic, I guess you could call it. And Orion's the author of several books. Check him out at orionfoxwood.com. Now, Orion, Durr wanted me to ask me in the chat room, Renee, can you get him back to the crossroads? Sounds like the old African-American meeting location with the devil, cutting deals at the crossroads. Mm-hmm. Didn't you sort of say something like that? Or
I did. The thing we've got to remember, when that word devil is being used, you immediately know something. You can hear that is going to be colonial language, likely used by Europeans. And would not have showed up in the African practices. They would have never, ever called the spirit the devil at the crossroads, ever. That concept got most popularized in America by Robert Johnson's music. I believe that was the 40s. I may be wrong, maybe the 50s. But this being at the crossroads And the reason he does get sometimes a bad rap is, again, you've got to be honest when you go to the spirit. You have to be honest. His other name, where I grew up with, was the Trick Doctor. The Trick Doctor. And remember that the word trick is an old folk word in the South for a working, for fixing a trick. So this spirit, this powerful spirit, is neither benevolent nor malevolent. It is what you bring with you. It is the content of your heart.
That can be the scariest thing of all.
Ooh, that's why I say the Dark Rider has made me be an honest man over the years.
You know, we talked a little bit earlier about, people getting involved in magic, or maybe even people spending time in some of these locations that you're talking about, some of these power centers, these crossroads and other places, and having the wrong intent, or, not be in the right place and go totally and utterly insane. I've seen it happen more than once.
Well, Renee, when I talk to people about these spirits, there are certain spirits that show up across cultures worldwide, such as this one. So because of that, we should be able to say one thing real clearly. They're real. All those cultures, all those millions of people aren't crazy. They know it's real, and their descendants know it's real, and that it can be contacted and can be worked with. When people go out to the crossroads, or they work with these powerful spirits, they often treat them like they're symbols. They'll say, oh, don't you think this is a symbol of this or a symbol of that? And I'm saying, no, you have to understand that they're not a symbol of anything. They're an independent, powerful being. And our elders in our many traditions have told us that. They've told us how to encounter them, what attitude to have in encountering them, and how to receive from them the best things in life. So what happens is people will go out and they'll go, well, I mean, as long as you go out and you're being honest in your heart, they are often very, very helpful. But it's when people go out not knowing what they want, not having the clarity, and they come maybe even with some doubt in their mind. They get themselves into some sticky wickets, because these spirits are more than happy to prove to you how real they are, but it may not be to your benefit.
I guess the ability to sort of be self-aware is really important, because, a lot of times I think people lie to themselves about who they are and about where they're really at and about what their real intentions are. I mean, no one, I don't think, sits around and says, oh, I'm a selfish bastard, but they might be. And if they're fooling themselves about that, I would think that could be a dangerous place to be when confronting these powers.
It can be, absolutely, because these spirits know us better than we know us.
It's sometimes hard, to step out of yourself and look and say, okay, how am I contributing to this problem? Or where is it that I can improve myself? And if I'm getting so upset about this thing, what is it about me that I need to look at? That's very, very difficult sometimes. But when you can do that, it would seem like it would put you in a little bit better position when dealing with sort of powerful and possibly dangerous forces.
Well, it really does. It really does. I offer you too, even praying to the sacred spirit that we all call God. And the thing is, we have to remember that the sacred spirit that we all call God, all of these spirits that we are talking about, they're all a part of God too. They're just the part of God that, say, does a certain function, a certain thing in nature. And when we pray, we've got to also consider what it is we're really asking, and if we pray with fervor, and we can arouse deity through what we call praying true, where I grew up, then you can wield a force through praying that can be extremely harmful or extremely helpful.
Yes.
So, again, this is why I like magic. Magic forces us to grow moral muscles. In my view, it forces us to grow moral muscles. And I like that.
Yeah, I think we better grow them if we're going to be messing around with it. I think so. If I could just throw you one more from the chat room, it's another one from Durr. He's on a roll tonight. He says, I know I'm asking too many questions. No, you're absolutely not.
No.
But does Orion have an opinion on the Native American folklore of the skinwalkers? Do you know about the skinwalkers?
I've heard about them. I don't feel like I understand the tradition enough to pay it honor. But my understanding is that those aren't. See, if that one group is, well, I should say, one tradition told me that they are human people who can shift by taking the flesh of or the skin of an animal and wear it and shift their shapes. Then I've heard others say actually they're spirit beings.
Yeah.
Right? So. I wish I could say more about that. I just don't feel like I'm...
No, that's fine. I completely understand. Yeah, I think that's from the Ute tribe, if I'm not mistaken. And there's a big, story about a ranch that's located on the path of the Skinwalker that has had a lot of strange, high strangeness and UFO phenomena and all kinds of things like that. So I think that's how most of us know about the Skinwalkers, but it is from a Native American legend, of course. But, oh my goodness. Now, for someone that is just entering into the study of those things that you're heavily involved in and have been for many years, where do we start? I guess, maybe with your books is a good place to start. But are there things that we can do in our daily lives that just, we could cleanse ourselves or to, affect our lives in a positive way?
Yeah, well, there's certainly prayer should be a part of what everyone does. And prayer is not connected to any religious tradition. No religious tradition owns prayer. Prayer is how we dial into what sources us, how we move ourselves into dialogue with what sources us. That, if you're not in dialogue with what sources you, then you're primarily living your life by default, meaning you're living your life simply responding to what comes up next, making the decisions that way, as opposed to being an interactive relationship with the force that creates galaxies. Then the other thing is be in a relationship with your ancestors. Now, call out to them. In fact, I always say to those wise and redeemed ancestors, those holy ancestors who love me and who walk with me, those known and unknown, seen and unseen, named and unnamed, I love you, I honor you, I thank you. And then I'll ask them for questions. Always know that there are spirits that walk with you. No one gets into this life alone. No one can stay here alone. You entered here through an ancestral stream that you're commingled in. And I've had people say, well, I didn't like any of my ancestors. And I tell them, you knew all 35,000 years of them? I don't think so. And if you go get, I love this now that we can get our blood tested, because when we got, some of my students sent for me to have that mitochondrial test, and mine came back and it had 35,000 years of history. And all I could think of was, that's 35,000 years of wisdom, of power, and of guidance walking with me. The other thing is something I call claim your head. Claim your head. When you get up in the morning, there are many forces that are more than willing to claim the direction of your attention. First, you claim it. Plug in, even if it's during coffee, plug into the sacred, enter into dialogue with it, plug into the spirit world, to the ancestors and other spirits that you may know about, and ask them for their help. Claim your head. And then spiritual cleansing. That's got to be ongoing. Because an unweeded garden will eventually get choked out.
Oh, wow.
You know, and so...
That's a great metaphor, yeah.
Thank you. And in fact, my book, the Conjure and the Crossroads one, I wrote that because I really wanted my understanding of the simple but powerful folk practices of the South to be useful and to make sense for people who didn't grow up around and weren't in that culture, for people to have things that were accessible, that they could do, that they could claim sovereignty over their lives, working these powerful magical practices. So, of course, I'd be a dummy to say I don't recommend that book, right? This is my book, and I do recommend it because I've had people. I get emails that would make you weep. I've had emails from people that said I was giving up on life until I read the book and started doing these practices.
Wow!
And now it's almost as if my soul can breathe. Is it incredible?
Yeah.
And those bring me to tears because those are the kinds of folks I want this work to reach. Is people who are trying to live a happy life, and they feel like a tire that's slowly deflating and it's patched that still has a slow leak they can't quite get at. And to take this kind of work and enter into an interactive, choice-driven life to claim the shape of their life and not let the forces around them claim it.
Absolutely.
You're a little preachy there.
Yeah, amen. Talk about it. I tell you, it's really interesting, and certainly the whole self-awareness thing, I would imagine would be key as you approach anything like this. Try to be, your authentic self, or just be your authentic self. And if you do that, you're not going to get into trouble, I would think.
Absolutely. And the flip side of that is I've had people come and go, Orion, I don't know what to pray for or to work spells for, to work magic for. I don't know. I don't know what I want in life. And you'd be surprised how many people are in that position because they've never really kind of stopped. They've always maybe lived for others, but not lived for themselves. And this concept of knowing what they want to be and what they want to do with their lives is something very new. So I always say, pray to the source in whatever way you do for the knowing of your needs. That should be the first thing you pray for and do magic for, is the knowing of your own needs.
Is that because one sort of has to take care of themselves before they can help anybody else?
Well, I mean, it is. It's also just to find out what it is that you need in life, what will fulfill you. Quite often the guidance on what we want or need in our life comes from outside of us. In fact, we find ourselves shaped by the forces outside of us instead of by the forces inside of us. We want to be in the driver's seat of our lives. And magic is a way of doing that. Well, all of these practices, these ways, are a way of doing that, of claiming your life,
I'm laughing because in the chat room, Durr is asking someone else to ask this question. But I'm going to ask it for him anyway. It says, ask Renee to ask Orion if there are any aromatics, punk, or burning of natural elements that promote cleansing.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
cedarwood. I know cedarwood.
Cedarwood, angelica.
Have you ever worked with something called Palo Santo?
Palo Santo. Oh, I love it. Camphor.
Oh, my gosh. I just became aware of that, and it drives me crazy to smell. It's so good.
Oh, it's so clean and pure and powerful.
Oh, amazing.
And something to say, so that's just a few things to burn in your house. But other things, people need to remember that for cleansing, when you do cleansing and clearing on yourself, also cleanse and clear your house. Because spiritual forces get trapped in there and they grow their own life, and it may be a life that you don't want. And so get on a regular schedule with maintaining the spiritual dimension of yourself and of your house. You will see things change in your life so quickly you won't believe it.
And are there different ways that you can do it? Like, and does it largely depend on what it is that you have in your intention, that you have in your mind? Like, I might take a branch of cedar and go through my house or go around outside on the four corners of the house, things like that. But somebody else might use, Palo Santo, or they might do some other thing with sea salt. Or is it really more about you than it is about the sort of specific props, if you don't mind me using that word?
Well, I would say it's about both. Like, for instance, the native wisdoms around cedar or sage or sweetgrass, the reason that practice has been passed down is because it works, and because it always works. And one of the things that I've often said is that sometimes I'm off my game, right, which means I'm lacking clarity. And I'm lacking a feeling of connection. Maybe I'm in the middle of a trauma or a crisis time. I'm just off balance. But if I have some of the traditional lore, even if I'm off balance, the likelihood is it's not. So, for instance, the sage or the sweetgrass and these things, they're not powerful to do what they do because we think they're powerful. They're powerful because the elders discovered over centuries of time they have that independent power in and of themselves. Yeah, so I always tell people, try to make sure that you're working. It's one thing to just grab whatever's kind of nearby, and that's useful. But also try to find out what older traditions teach about, for instance, spiritual cleansing, and what they say is useful and that they have passed on. They pass these things on because they work. And so, exactly, so you don't have to figure that out. You can have tools in your toolbox ready to use, that have tried and true effects.
Right. So it is the ingredients, into your ritual are very important. And it's sort of a partnership between those things and you and your intention.
Now you're talking. Yeah, now you're talking the old traditional way. The old traditional way in conjuring and witchcraft is not that these herbs and things are just things, right? It is that they are beings. They are people. They are spirit. And so these stones, these herbs, these things that we're working with are persons. And if we come to them, because we're asking them, we're working with them for help, right? Because they have a power that for some reason we feel that we don't, or we don't have enough of at that time. So if I burn cedar, for instance, it's because I need cleansing, and because I feel that herb has the power to do that more efficiently than maybe my words can. Does this make sense? So
yeah, absolutely.
The fact that I'm going to this powerful spirit being named Cedar, and for that, I'm going to get much more benefit, right? When we honor the power of what we're working with and the personhood of what we're working with, then it opens out its spirit core to work with us.
Wow. That is really, and it's very interesting how you said, they're persons, and I know that certainly in the Native American culture, these things that are used, like there's a tobacco that they call the Ancient One. And it was grown, in a primeval forest, and they kept it, and there's just very little left, and they use it very, very rarely. And a medicine man said that, a medicine man could live his whole life and never use it, because you only use it in the most dire or the most important of circumstances, because it's becoming so scarce and it's so powerful. Wow. But they refer to it as the Ancient One.
Wow.
And it doesn't sound like a thing. It sounds like a person, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Well, that's how the old the old workers across traditions spoke to them. Like when the witch would go out into the woods to collect his or her herbs, they weren't going out to collect a symbol of anything. They were going out to ask a powerful being for the help of its power. And they were going out in special ways, whether that's making offerings, special times, that's special to the plant, to gather this power, to help their workings, When we work in those kinds of ways, we find that then when we go to these beings, the plant, the stone, the whatever, that we're coming at them in a different way. They don't see us as, well, here comes that human, always trying to take something. They see us as family, and they lean in to help us.
Wow. That's very comforting.
Well, thank you.
And it sounds very much like, maybe these things are things that have been with us, that we knew about, have been suppressed in a lot of ways, and sort of vilified and made to appear negative and evil and devilish and satanic and all that. And it's something that, we should maybe reacquaint ourselves with. And I think that, possibly people are more open to that right now, because they're more open to questioning authorities, questioning our programming.
I think so. I think there's this thing that gets left out in the discussions about why magic has become such an interest to people. There's this other thing that we leave out. It's because the ancestors want us to go back to our roots. I have a saying: you cannot bless the fruits and curse the roots. We're being called back by the forces that live at the very foundations of life to come back and shore up the roots of our relationship with life, the interrelationships and the invisible aspects of life, so that we can get ourselves back on track. I fear if we don't, we're in danger as a species because of our ecological choices. Our ecological choices are not acknowledging the sacred, that sacred invisible relationship between visible things.
Oh my gosh, Orion, I'm sorry, the music is rolling and we got just a couple more seconds to go. Thank you so much. The time flew by. Orion Foxwood, go to orionfoxwood.com, get his books, and see where he's going to be showing up next. Thank you so much.
Thank you. What an honor to be on here.
Oh, it was wonderful. Thank you. Take care, everybody.